Hello everybody, welcome back. Today's tutorial is going to teach you how to edit photos in Photoshop using the Lasso tool. So to start, I need to open Photoshop. So I'll go to the lower left Start button. I'm going to find the Adobe Design and Web Premium, and then I'm going to scroll down, find Adobe Photoshop 6, and open that. Now remember, this is Photoshop running on a virtual desktop through a PC computer, so any Mac shortcuts you have might be a little bit different. Once I have this Photoshop open, I'm going to go to File and choose Open. Now, I had previously saved a folder on my desktop of this virtual desktop called Photoshop Exercise 3, so I'm going to open that. Click the first image, hold the Shift key, click the last image. They're all selected, and then I'm going to click Open. Now they're all going to open across the top. I don't know that I need all of them, but I figured I'd rather just get them all open and deal with it than have to go back and open them again. So today we're going to learn the Lasso tool. I'm going to start with this first image. Over in your toolbar on the left-hand side are all your tools. This third one down is the Lasso tool, and when I click on it, sometimes you have to double click or click and hold to get this to open. You'll see there's 3 different types of lassos. I'm going to start with just the first lasso tool. And then right here, this is your sub menu along the bottom. So I refer to this up here, File, Edit, Image, etc. as the top menu. And then here, this is my sub menu underneath. To start, I just want to make sure my feathering is set at 0. And for what we need to do, we don't need to worry about these other tools. Now, the lasso tool basically will allow you to select an area of the image. So I'm just going to select an area right there, a big circle in the middle. And whatever I tell the computer to do next, it's only going to do it within that area that I have selected. So let's say I want to delete it. I'm just going to hit the delete key on my keyboard, and then I'm going to click OK in that window. So now you can see that it's gone. So only what I did happened, like what I told the computer, it only happened in that small little area that I selected. Now, this little dotted line that's kind of moving along, we call those the dancing ants. Now, technically, they look more like they're ants marching, but let's say I made this selection and I don't want that selection. I have to get rid of it. And the shortcut to get rid of it, if you were on a Mac, it would be Command D, D for dancing. Now that's why we call these the dancing ants. But when you're on this virtual PC, it's not Command D, it's Control D. So if I hit Control and D on my keyboard, that selection disappears. And you can see I have my history open over here. You can see I lassoed and then I deselected. So we're going to go through these 3 different lasso tools and try them all out, and I want you guys to do the same at home. So this first lasso tool, how it works, you can sort of see, I'll put my cursor right inside of this flamingo on the left. You can see my cursor now looks like an arrow with a little lasso. Wherever I drag this cursor, so I'm clicking and holding my clicker right now, holding my mouse, and wherever I drag this is what my selection is. Now you can see I've got this crazy line. I don't obviously want that, so I'm going to hit Control D. But I am going to grab maybe this grass in the lower left corner. Oh, I forgot to show you something. Now let's say I'm going to draw this big C, and I'm holding my clicker right now. When I let go of that clicker, it's going to immediately connect a straight line from wherever I stopped to wherever I started. So I could, if I drew a circle here, I could get roughly back to the beginning and let go and it will connect. Or maybe I just make a shape and then I started on the left and I ended on the right. And when I let go of my clicker, they just automatically connect. So now I'm just going to go down here. These edits that you make today might not be fantastic, but I'm going to go into this grass and I'm going to just try to kind of select some of this grass. And now you can see down in my lower left corner, I have my dancing ants happening. And now it's up to you what you guys want to do to edit. I would just suggest trying something out. So I might go up into Image, Adjustments, and I might choose one of these adjustments. Let's start with brightness and contrast, just because it's there. In my window, maybe I'm going to drag that brightness up and drag that contrast really high and just do something kind of silly. Now, a little bit of this Photoshop exercise is kind of dumb. If you want to try and do something cool and interesting, you can. Really, I want you guys to just learn how to use this tool for now. So maybe then I say, okay. Now I've used the lasso tool, and up at the top, there's no feathering. And if you look at the directions in the tutorial, it says the lasso tool with no feathering and with feathering. So let's talk quick about what feathering is. I'm going to hit Control D and get rid of those dancing ants because I don't need those anymore. And I'm going to show you a selection. I'm just going to make a little circle here, and I'm going to delete that just so it's easy to see what I did. And then Control D to get rid of the dancing ants. Now I'm going to set my feathering, and I'm going to go pretty high. I'm going to go like 40 on my feathering. So I typed 40. Apparently it wanted to go to 39.8 all on its own, but that's okay. And right next to this, I'm just going to show you what happens. I'm going to draw another circle, and I'm going to delete that one again and click OK again, and Control D to get rid of those dancing ants. Now, can you see the difference? How on the left, no feathering has a very crisp edge. I like to say this is like when you're cutting something out of a magazine. Maybe you're making a collage and you cut something out of a magazine with scissors. Where on the right, when you add the feathering, it's more like you're tearing the paper and you can see that fuzzy edge of the paper. Now, I'm going to undo all of that because I don't want that. So I did a lasso, kind of cheesy, but I just wanted to show you how it works. Lasso with no feathering. Now I'm going to do it again with some feathering. So I'm going to go back up to that sub menu. This time I'm only going to set my feathering at like 10. Doesn't need to be crazy. And maybe I'm going to take a section of this water where this flamingo is on the left. And maybe I want to change its color or something fun. So I'm just going to kind of draw around this reflection of this flamingo with my lasso tool. And now I have this selection here, and I've set the feathering. So it's going to be a soft edge. If you look down at the bottom, you can see the crisp edge where I changed the color of the grass. And if I had a softer edge, you wouldn't see that. There's a time and a place for both of these edits. So I'm going to go to image adjustments. This time, maybe I'll choose hue and saturation. Just have a little fun with this, learn some new tools. So maybe I'm going to change the color of that water. Ooh, that's kind of funky. I can change the saturation of it. Maybe I'm going to make it a little brighter. And then click OK. Now I still have those dancing ants. If I want to try to do something else, if I want to switch a layer or switch a tool, it's not going to let me. So I have to hit Control D and get rid of it. So now I've made an edit with the lasso tool at the bottom in the grass with no feathering, and at the top in this reflection with feathering. And you can see, I'm going to Control plus, hopefully this works, zooms me in a little bit. You can see, ooh, I zoomed in a lot. You can see it has a soft edge where I've changed the colors versus down below it where I changed the color of the grass, it has that crispy edge. So I'm going to just minimize that back down again. Remember, that's Control plus and Control minus when you're working through the VMware. All right, so that's the first lasso. The second lasso, click and hold that, is the polygon. And if you know what a polygon is, it's a straight-sided shape. So watch me up in the sky on the left here. I'm going to click a spot. Now with the lasso, you click and hold and you drag. With the polygon, you click, and now you see this line? I'm not clicking anymore. I'm just moving my mouse. So if I click, 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 and every time I'm moving and clicking, everywhere I click is making like a spot, and then it's a straight line. Now remember, with a lasso tool, I clicked and dragged and held my clicker, and when I let go of my clicker, the end went and automatically met the beginning. Well, obviously now I'm not holding my clicker anymore. You can't see me. I'm waving my hands around, showing you that I'm not holding my clicker. But it's not connecting. So what you have to do, and if you watch as my mouse gets closer, my cursor gets closer, excuse me. Once I get to that starting point, you can barely see it, but like a little circle appears. If you watch my mouse, circle appears, circle disappears, circle appears, circle disappears. So I'm going to click that. And now I have my selection. Same deal with the feathering and the no feathering. So you can see how these have really like pointy edges. I'm going to Control D that, and I'm going to set my feathering at 40. And I'm going to do that same kind of shape that I just did with really crispy, pointy edges. Get back to my beginning. close it. Now see how my points all kind of curved, and that's because I've softened those edges. So maybe for this polygon lasso, I'm going to go on the right-hand side where there's this other grass, and I'm going to just click, and my feathering's at 40, so that's going to be pretty soft. You have to, I meant to do this without feathering, but I already started, and that's an important note to remember. You have to set your feathering before you select your area. So if I didn't set my feathering and I wanted this to have that crispy edge, then I would have to do my lasso all over again. But since we're just playing around here, I'm not going to stress that. So I made my selection, and then again, just try something different. I'm going to go to image adjustments, and this time, I don't know, let's posterize it and see what happens. Ooh, it makes like a funky kind of cool thing. And you can drag your levels of posterization and make it even kind of more fun and crazy. So I'm just going to go with 3 and click OK. And then Control D to get rid of it. Now I'm going to go back to the polygon, or to the feathering, excuse me, set my feathering at 0. I'm still in the polygon lasso, and I'm going to do something different. Maybe I'm going to do like a little box around this top right flamingo who's hanging out back there. I'm just going to draw a little box around him. Now, the trick is, nope, finding my end spot. So I found my end spot. Now I have this little box. Let's try something different. Let's go to image adjustments, and maybe I will invert him so he's a negative image instead of a positive image, just for kind of funsies. And my hope here is that you guys just kind of experiment when you make these selections. Like I'll make a selection in the middle here. When you make these selections, try something new. Maybe go to filter and go to the filter gallery and try those out. I don't know if you've learned filters yet, but just kind of play around and experiment. Or go into these image adjustments and change some things around. Try some contrast. You know, there's stuff in here. If you don't know how it works, you can Google it, or just play around and see what happens. That's kind of the purpose of this exercise, is to just see. So now we've done the lasso tool with feathering and without. We've done the polygon lasso tool with feathering and without. And now we're going to do the magnetic lasso. And the magnetic lasso is my favorite. And if you look through the tutorial and the step-by-steps, it kind of explains how each of these work. The way the magnetic lasso works is it basically magnets to an edge. So I'm going to select this flamingo. It basically magnets to an edge where there's a contrast in color. So my first tip with a magnetic lasso is to zoom in. And zoom in so that whatever you're lassoing kind of fills your entire page. So I'm zoomed in a little bit too far. I can't quite get the entire flamingo in there. So down here in my bottom, I don't know if you can see this, my bottom, it says one left corner, 100%. I'm going to go to 95% and hit return. And that's still, let's see if I can get the whole flamingo in there. The better you can see the whole thing, the easier the lasso is to use. All right, so I've filled my screen with my flamingo, whatever it is I'm selecting. I'm on my magnetic lasso. I'm going to start with 0 feathering. Remember, make sure you're checking your feathering before you start your selection. You can't change it once you're midway. So these things, this contrast, this is the amount of contrast that it needs between the two colors that you're going to select. The frequency is how often these little dots are appearing. I would just say experiment with these. It would take me an eternity to explain them all. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to remember my starting point, and I'm going to start back here at the flamingo's backwards knee. Flamingos are pretty crazy creatures. So I'm going to click there. And then you can see as I drag, I'm not clicking yet, but as I drag my mouse along that line, if you see how the line is like magneting to that significant contrast in color. That's why it's called the magnetic lasso. So you can definitely click. I haven't clicked yet. I'm doing a pretty good job with this. Now see how it jumps out there because some of his feathers are weird? It's sensing that color change. And in this situation, it's okay because those are some of his feathers. Now, again, I still haven't clicked. I'm just carefully running my mouse along that edge. And sometimes you see, I don't know if you can see it, it kind of jumps out. And if it does that, it's okay. Like if I get into a squirrely spot where it can't tell, and I'm going to go a little bit faster here, like right there. See how it kind of right in the back of his neck, it kind of jumped in, and that's wrong. I don't want that. I'm going to click delete. And it did that because right here, there's not a lot of contrast between those two colors. And it also happened because I was going a little fast. So now I'm going to click, 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 and I'm going to just do a bunch of little clicks right on that edge there just to help me get through that area where there's not a lot of contrast. And I'm going to keep going around his whole face. Now, you guys, oh, see it jumped in again. See it jumped in. I'm pointing to my screen like you guys can see what I'm doing. It jumped in by his beak because it wants to go to that dark edge. So I've got to be a little bit more careful, and I've got to kind of click through that and catch those little mistakes. That's why it's so helpful to zoom in really close. So I'm going to speed up a little bit here because you guys are probably getting bored. And I'm going to keep going. Now, something's going to happen with a magnetic lasso. There, it jumped out again. And you're like, oh, crap. And then this starts happening. And see, my mouse is going crazy. And you're like, what the heck? And my lasso line is everywhere. And you've gotten almost all the way through. And you're like, oh, my God, I ruined it. I have to start over. And then you get really mad. My first bit of advice is when this happens, I'm taking my hands off the keyboard, taking a nice deep cleansing breath. And then I'm just going to start deleting. And if I keep hitting that delete button on my keyboard, all those little dots, those little frequency dots went away. And I'm going to back myself right out. Now, do this, back it out of there before you lose total control, because there is a point of no return. All right, so I've calmed down a little bit. Maybe I'm just going to take a little breather. This part's a little wonky because that reflection of the other flamingo is the same. So I might just have to click, 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 click right through there until I can get back to a place with bigger contrast. All right, I'm going to speed this business up. I'm going to go all the way down. I'm going to select his leg. We're going to make a second flamingo. All right, I'm not doing the greatest job right now, but it's because you guys are like, come on, Mrs. Duckworth. This video is boring. Trying to keep it entertaining, kiddos, just like I would if we were at school. All right, I'm going to go around his foot. I'm missing spots. Whoa, totally missed everything. Now the foot in the water, it keeps wanting to jump out of there because it's the same color. So I got to click, 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 click through there. I missed part of his leg. It's okay. You guys do a better job than me. Now, just like the polygon lasso, I have to get back to my starting clicker. Why it's really important to remember where your starting clicker is. So I'm going to go back. There it is. Notice that little circle disappears next to my mouse, reappears, disappears, reappears. Now when I click, now I've got my entire flamingo selected with zero feathering. And I could do the same thing. I could change his color. I could add a filter to him. I could do something funny. This time I'm going to actually copy and paste him. So you can do the shortcut Control C to copy. I'm just going to go up here to edit, copy. And then you can do the shortcut again if you wanted, Control P, or Control V, and I'm going to paste him. And it looks like nothing happens, but if you check over here on your right, you've got another layer. And if I switch to my Move tool over on the left toolbar, that first tool, and I'm on my new flamingo layer, I can move him, and lo and behold, I have two flamingos. So I'm going to get that down again so you can see what I did. So I have this other flamingo here, and he's hanging out, and he's having a good time. They're twins. Now, I'm going to zoom back in again. This PC system works kind of slow. And you can see that I've got this crispy edge, and in some spots it looks kind of cheesy because I didn't have my feathering set. If I did the same thing, and you don't want to go too high if you set your feathering. I'm going to really quick go back to my magnetic lasso. I'm going to set my feathering at 5 so you can see that that's probably too high. Even a 1 or a 2 feathering will make it look a little more realistic. And I'm going to do this fast. I'm going to go around here. You guys do a better job. I'm going to go around here. I'm going to select him. Lost part of his head. No big deal. Got extra water. Also no big deal. I just want you to see the difference between a feathering. I don't have his whole leg. No big deal. All right. I just want you guys to see the difference. So I'm going to get back to the beginning. I have him selected with 5 on the feathering. I'm going to do the same thing. Edit, copy. Uh-oh. This is a mistake you guys are going to make. Cannot copy because I'm not on, there's nothing on my layer. I look over here. Look, I was lassoing the layer that only has the new flamingo. It's not a big deal when this happens. I do it all the time. Switch to your background layer. Now your selection is officially on your background layer. And I'm going to go to edit copy. This time it will work. Sometimes I like it when I make those mistakes because I forget to tell you the mistake I'm making. And I'm going to now see I have another layer. And I'm going to go back to my move tool. And I'm going to move. Oh my goodness. There's my layer 2. Sorry. Back to my move tool. And I'm going to move this third flamingo. And again, I'm going to get kind of close in there. And we can check out the difference between these. And pardon that noise that just happened in the background. My dogs just came running in. All right, so you can see I have 3 different levels. This first one on the left, that's the original. In the middle, the feathering was set at 5. And on the right, there's 0 feathering. So this one here in the middle, it's almost a little too soft. It doesn't look realistic anymore. I'm going to make that back to its normal. It's not too bad, but there are parts of it where overlap here, like on his back, where I can see too much background and it looks a little bit silly. So that's how you use the magnetic lasso with and without feathering. And that should be all you need to know to get started with this. You're going to go ahead and practice all of these 3 tools, each of them with feathering and without. So in your final image, you'll have an image with, or an area with the lasso tool without feathering, the lasso tool with feathering, the polygon with feathering and without, and then the magnetic with feathering and without. Now mine were kind of cheesy edits. If you want to try to do something cool and fun and, you know, make your image kind of weird, go for it. But I should be able to see the difference in all of these edits. Now, when you're done, you're going to go to File, Save As, and you're going to find whatever that folder is that you made where you saved your images. And now my image is called img0138.psd. After the 38, but before the .psd, I'm going to type lasso in there because this is my lasso edit. I'm saving it in that Photoshop Exercise 3 folder. And I'm going to click Save. Photoshop formats, just click OK. Now, I also want you to save this as a JPEG file because you need to put this into a template to hand in to me and it won't take the Photoshop file. So I'm going to go to File, Save As again. It should stay the same name. It should stay the same folder. And this time I'm going to click on where it says Photoshop and choose JPEG, just the regular JPEG, not the other ones. And then I'm going to click Save again. When it comes up JPEG options, just click OK again. Now, before I quit Photoshop, I'm just going to go in the top right corner and minimize it. Before I quit, I just want to go to that folder and double check and make sure. I have my Lasso JPEG and I have my Lasso Photoshop and I have my original. I need all 3 of these images in order to kind of go on and complete and finish this project. I'm going to close that out. And that's all it takes to use your lasso tool. As always, if you have questions, reach out and find me.